Hello, I want to talk about mobile payments and things for this video. Now, I know where a lot of people feel like this is heading and the direction that it's going, but I mean, the way I am, as long as something is not, if someone wants to use a watch or a phone to do something, that's fine, or a card, as long as something is not on me or in me, like they're not putting it in my hand or they're not putting it like tattooed on me or putting it on my head, then I'm fine. But a lot of people, there were people talking to me and said that they don't understand how it happens. They said it is so weird to them, it's like magic. And I started explaining it to them and they were like, whoa, they were just so confused by it. So for this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how this stuff works, but I'm not going to go into detail a lot. I'm just going to talk and ramble on about it. So I was trying to explain to the individual that, by the way, I just wanted to make a relaxing video about how this works. He said it's almost like magic, and I said, really? In a way, it does feel that way. I mean, we went from not being able to do anything to being able to have all this stuff. I told him I witnessed. He thought I was like his age. He was 19, but I was, much older. He's like, well, you got me beat by 11 years. But I said, I literally witnessed the transition of everything. But I explained to him how it happened, and they were, just said it sounded like I knew a lot of what I was talking about, and he didn't know. But I'll go ahead and talk about it a little bit because I thought it would really, really be interesting to explain just details of how things actually work and how what's actually happening whenever you do this. So I was telling him, well, first, obviously the biometrics process. When you have your thumbprint registered in the phone, and I said it breaks it down into codes of zeros and ones, and I said that thumbprint is then scanned. So what they call Knox Security, and the company Knox Security by Samsung is scanning your thumbprint to make sure it's your identity, and that's called biometric authentication. And the biometrics technology in the phone scans the thumbprint and identifies that it's you, sends it to these companies. Well, and then Google Pay is then opened, and once at the point of sales terminal, it's called a POS terminal, the point of sales terminal then okays it from their particular merchant or their company and where their funds are coming from and where their funds go. They okay it and allow the reader that emits a frequency in their computer, like right up there at the top, or it could be right there. If you're not using a QR code, you can read a scanner. And what happens is when you put the phone near there first, I said that's just the process of what's happening on their end. What's happening before you ever have, that enabled, you have to have an online banking account. You have to allow your bank to have online banking. Then you make a digital version of your card. And I said, what that card is called, I was going to tell him all that, but he said he was just like, I don't understand it. But so I just thought I'd talk about it in a video. First, when you put your card in the phone, it creates what's called a tokenized version. Now, it's not the actual card. It's called your virtual account number. And it creates what I just said, a VAN. It creates a VAN, a virtual account number. And that virtual card number is called a token. And so when you add that card, your bank card, to the phone, Google then takes a copy and copies a tokenized version of your card and creates a virtual account number. And that is a virtual card that's shared with the merchant, not your actual card. So what happens is the card that's getting the information being given is the virtual card. The tokenized version or the virtual account number is shared. So when you see that AAC, the SSID, the AID number, the transaction number, the digital transaction code, and you see all of that. So, for example, if you're using your bank and it transfers, the moment you scan that terminal, the moment you lay your phone down, there is a RFID chip, a radio frequency identification chip, that uses an even more advanced form of technology called NFC, or a near field communication. And when that happens, both the near field communication in your phone and the point of sales terminal are both scanning for each other. And now they can do that up to 4 or 5 inches away from the device, the reader. And as it's reading, after you've scanned your thumbprint using biometric authentication, it reads each other. And the card that you have tokenized gets shared. Your original card does not ever get shared with the merchant. And it shares only a virtual account number, and a temporary tokenized version of the card gets shared with the merchant's reader. And they send each other using near field communication. The electromagnetic frequency okays the transaction process to take place. But as it's reading right there at the terminal, as it's reading that phone, the codes that are processing back and forth. For example, if you've added your bank card, if it's a MasterCard, for example, it's got to contact MasterCard, and they've got to okay it. And then they've got to contact your bank, and they've got to send a one-time authentication code. Basically, each time that code's different, and those two codes, they have to match. When that point of sales terminal and your phone sends a code to the bank, they have to match. If they don't, it's like, it's almost like fraud, so they won't accept it. So they are sending a bunch of zeros and ones back and forth, basically, that turn out to be a transaction identification or transaction ID. Once it's, on the receipt, that's what you'll see, a transaction ID, whether it's in PayPal or your bank. So Google Pay gets contacted that funds were sent from your bank through MasterCard to Google Pay. And then those funds, a digital dollar or a digital version of codes, zeros and ones that represent the funds, are transferred from your bank through Google Pay, from MasterCard through that terminal, and it gets sent to their bank. And sometimes if it goes through the credit system, it takes up to 72 hours to process. Like if you were in a gas station and they use credit servers instead, and say you're going to take some money out of the bank, well, they've got to contact MasterCard, they've got to contact your bank, and if you're using the PayPal card you have stored on your phone, it's got to contact all of them: MasterCard, your bank, Samsung, Google, and PayPal, all those companies. The merchant's bank, it's got to contact the people the companies that are and servers that are running the point of sales terminal, and all of them are sending this information back and forth, and then it's got to be okayed. And all of that's not only happening from the phone, but all around. They're sending all of this through fiber optics cables, through optical fiber cables. They're all sending this information through beams of light that transmit codes encrypted as zeros and ones. But thankfully, all these transactions are supposed to be encrypted, so the merchant can never receive your card number. And a lot of times people view that as more secure or for security purposes. And that's why it's so much more difficult for someone to hack something like this. It's not impossible, but if they were to hack the phone using a near field communication hacking device, they could steal the virtual account number, but then they would never be able to get any funds out because they couldn't get your bank account or your actual MasterCard because it's just a tokenized version. That's why it's so much more encrypted and so much more secure than the other way. But the all of what's going on, for example, if you use PayPal, if you're using PayPal and you transfer money, they got to contact your bank, MasterCard, and then they've got to send money from your bank through MasterCard to the PayPal account. Then Google's got to be notified to send that money over to PayPal. I think that's the next $10 up, and it's called the top-up amount. And if the transaction is $15, the top-up amount is $20, and then you're left with $5 in your PayPal account, and you can contact you and transfer the rest of it over, stuff like that. That's how that works. But all of that's happening in milliseconds, and people still complain about the speed. So that is why it's almost impossible for someone to get your actual card information. And that's why people usually will use biometrics on the phone, and they'll open the Google Pay service when paying online. Say if you're going on eBay, if you're purchasing something online on a website, well, that merchant no longer has to get your bank information or your card information. You just scan the thumbprint, open up Google Pay, and type in just automatically fill in your Google Pay, and then it will go through that, so they only get an encrypted version of your card or the tokenized version, not the original. But all that's happening in milliseconds. And then it sends it off in beams of light through the optical fiber cables and communicates to the servers, whether it's in California or New York or wherever. If you're making, usually I think the local version, I think AT&T, for example, it has to have an internet connection. So you're using that phone, it's got to go through Alpharetta, Georgia. So that it goes through Alpharetta, Georgia first before then going to California, and then communicating back with your bank, and then sending the information and the money over, and then to the merchant. And all this is happening in milliseconds. And then you get a notification, and they email you, text you, and then immediately saying, hey, transaction was done, here's your receipt, and all of that. And you get a transaction ID, a digital transaction identification. But all that's happening in literal milliseconds, and a lot of people take it for granted. They'll be frustrated, and they take it for granted that this process is taking place in that amount of time. Now, sometimes it can be slow or delayed depending on network connection and how many individuals are bogging down the network or things like that, but many times it's pretty quick anymore. I've seen people, do that very quickly, and it happens super fast. So, just like on the internet when you're streaming something, it's actually it's like a network of networks. It's like computers that are everywhere that store the content that you're searching for, and then it's requesting it and sending it back to you. An IP address, which is Internet Protocol address, it's actually your device's individual unique code, and that gets sent out just like an address of a house, for example. You won't know where to send the letter if you don't have an address. Well, just like a network server where a video is stored will not know where to stream or send or download that to if, depending on what you're doing, if you don't have an Internet Protocol address to send it to. They'll never know where to reassemble the data. So it's like it disassembles the codes and then sends it back and reassembles it, sending it through the fiber optics cable network. And when you're streaming something, it's got to reassemble it on the other side. Especially if it's literal live streaming, that's a whole other ball game. But it is very complex, and it's basically you're just pulling up something from someone else's computer. It's just someone else's hard drive, but it's in server rooms and data storage, data server centers, data centers, whatever you want to call them, and servers that are housing those data centers send the information to you that you requested. And that's pretty much the way it works for everything. You're just getting information from another computer, a network of networks known as the internet. Interestingly, the map of the internet looks very similar to the map of the human brain, of the motor neurons, and the motor neurons in the human brain, as well as the internet network map, look very similar to what they have proposed, the map of the universe looks like. Very, very perplexing stuff there. Anyway, I just thought I would share a little bit about how that works and how, I mean, it's convenient, but and very interesting, very amazing how quickly and how fast these things process from the phone to these multiple companies communicating with each other to the near field communication, electromagnetic frequency, and it's like it. And we've got this technology now to where it is. It used to be on a larger wavelength. Now it's micromillimeter wavelength, which is actually more dangerous on the human body, though. But this micromillimeter wavelength actually transmits data even quicker, and that's what 5G is, the fifth generation signal. But it's actually there are some studies that show that it's, you know what I mean. I'm not going to say it in this video, but so I don't spark any issues. But it's really interesting how this stuff works and how quickly it transmits information and data on this network of networks. And people just don't think about it, and they take it for granted as they use it. But that's all for this video, just a little bit of a simple overview of how mobile payments actually work. Now, if you're using a QR code, Walmart and Kroger, they only allow a QR code. So that's a whole other thing where the QR code on the screen represents the store's information, and then the app that you have with your data or your card information on file, like Walmart Pay, they have your card on file, so when your phone scans that QR code, it represents, a payment for the store needs to take place. They open up your card and you say that particular card you have on file, and then it processes through their servers and then pays using the QR code scan. That's a different type of thing that's not NFC or that's not the same thing as near field communication or the mobile pay. We've had NFC for a long time, and where you can put one Samsung phone on the back of another one and transfer files. They'll buzz and then it'll transfer files over. Bluetooth has been a near field communication for a long time. Bluetooth will actually transmit data. You can have one phone transfer another picture to another one through Bluetooth. It breaks the codes down, sends it over a Bluetooth frequency as zeros and ones, and reassembles it on the other phone without having to go through using the use of a cellular network, without having to break it down, send it all across the country, and then send it back to a phone that's right next to you. You can just use Bluetooth and transmit it that way, or put one phone against the other and transfer the codes of the picture using near-field communication, and they will communicate the zeros and ones necessary to disassemble the picture from one device and begin to reassemble it on the other device. Once the code's broken down, then you see the picture, and reassembled, you see the picture that was sent. That's actually even a more primitive style of transferring things than the cellular network. So it's amazing how this stuff works, and I will talk again some other time. That's all for this video. Just wanted to break it down a bit. Please show support, like, subscribe, and share, as well as put your comments below on whether you enjoyed this video. I love you all. Signing out from this video.